Brazil is currently experiencing a free speech recession. But we did not wake up one day just decided to censor people. And what's happening currently is very relevant to the country and the region as a whole. I'm Jamil Assis, the director at Sivis Institute, and here is what we can do about it. I won't tolerate anyone calling me a thief. Where did that phrase come from? So that's Supreme Court Judge Flávio Dino, a former member of the Communist Party of Brazil, in a trial recently in which our Supreme Court decided that crimes against the honor of public authorities in Brazil should be punished more harshly than crimes against regular people. That same Supreme Court in 2019 started by itself an investigation called Fake News Inquiry to look into people that were attacking our institutions with fake news and disinformation, crimes that don't even exist in our Constitution. One of the first measures of this inquiry to censor magazine articles that show the connection between Supreme Court judges, their family members, and huge corruption scandals. And the shielding that this investigation brought by persecuting thousands of people, from comedians, journalists, social activists, has not come to good ends. Every day now for the past few months, Brazilians are flooded with information of corruption scandals involving our Supreme Court judges and their family members. A big important detail, however, these members also serve in our electoral Supreme Court, which in 2022, our last presidential election, decided that newspapers just couldn't run the story connecting one of the then candidates and dictators from Latin America and their relationships. And in an unprecedented decision in recent Brazilian democracy, they censored a documentary before its exhibition anywhere in the country and called that decision excepcionalissima. This puts Brazil right in the middle of what the future of free speech calls a global recession on this fundamental human right. Our electoral law is a huge example of that, in which vague definitions and terrible implementation that varies across the country leads us to a lot of juridical insecurity. That insecurity, in turn, gives place to fear. In a national survey we ran, over a third of Brazilians across the political spectrum are afraid of being persecuted by authorities if they criticize a public policy or a public authority. And this matters for the world as a whole. Brazil is, or actually once was, the largest democracy in the region, one of the largest in the world. And now we are an example, whatever we do. Who hasn't heard the term Brazilianization? Of course, in a bad context. This is where Sivis come in, a 15-year-old think tank dedicated to promoting democratic values in Brazil. And with the help of SmartBets, we can guarantee that the first of the civil liberties, the right to free expression, can flourish in Brazil. No democracy can be supported without the protection of oppositional and critical political speech, however uncomfortable that is. There is a vicious cycle in place currently in Brazil, with laws and vague definitions lead to fear and excess removal of content in an attempt to sanitize the political debate, leading to bad precedents in our justice system, and then more restrictive legislation being put in place, closing both this vicious cycle and the civic space that we have to contest the powers that be. Here's how we change that in a 4-step program that has already started a few years back. First, we engage with the electoral justice systems to identify these vague points where we can improve legislation. Then we promote pro-free speech interpretation of this awful legislation. Then we monitor the current election year, which is critical, again, a presidential election in Brazil, highly contested. For important cases, restricted decisions generate just what we need for an evidence-based reform. We are at the window of opportunity in Brazil. 2027 is an off-election year where a new Congress, eager to pass new legislation, will be open to high-quality data informing an evidence-based reform. And Sivis has done this in the past. Just last year, 2 important pieces of legislation restricting online speech, we managed to mitigate their risks. And with over 50 opinion articles in the most important newspapers in Brazil, across the political spectrum, we can offer just what the country needs as a 15-year-old qualified research organization that can speak to both the left and the right. And with the help of SmartBets, we can achieve not only changes to our electoral legislation or just one political cycle in Brazil, but make Brazil a trendsetter against the free speech recession that's ravaging the world today. Thank you.
So throughout your presentation, you mentioned freedom of expression being such a hot topic right now. And there are a lot of conversations right now about free speech, but sometimes people take it in the context of getting it confused with the exercise of freedom of association, such as a platform deciding that they don't want someone to be involved with them or excluding them from their platform due to their speech and calling this censorship. Despite claiming to be advocating for free speech, some organizations get that conflated and confused. And so as you're looking at accomplishing such large goals through your project, can you tell us a little bit about plans for building allies and coalitions when there is some miscommunication there, some confusion, and how are you going to make sure that your message really cuts through despite all that noise?
Awesome. So thanks for the question and the opportunity to be here. So as anywhere in the world, free speech currently in Brazil is a highly polarized topic with definitions varying across the political spectrum. And what we've managed to build with Sivis this past 15 years is actually space and partnerships throughout the political spectrum. Our logo shows a palindrome, so democracy doesn't come from the left or the right. It's the dialogue, it's the dissent that is able to happen that actually sustains democracy. So we take that to heart and participate currently in the largest left-wing organizations, networks with people advocating for democracy, as well as on the right. And with publications on the major newspapers, in which editorials are very progressive and also very conservative, we managed to build significant relations with these people, publishing our opinion, which doesn't vary. We still defend the value of free speech. So we understand that although there is a lot of noise on what free speech means for people in Brazil, what we're managing to do with high quality research and publications across the political spectrum is kind of bring people to a common ground, to what we need debating, what are the excess cases that are happening currently in Brazil multiple times and becoming a routine, and agreeing that we shouldn't be surpassing our constitution, we shouldn't be censoring people before its exhibition, and we should be promoting free speech rather than restricting the space for discussion.
Absolutely, and kind of building on that, can you tell us a little bit more? You mentioned some of the early work that your team has done on this issue, and you've got a long history with the organization. But like we saw in this morning's case study with Colombia, getting a lot of the legal and communications groundwork settled from the get-go can really help with your impact and making sure that your strategy is right on track. So can you tell us a little bit about some of your plans to help reshape some of the debate early on and to make sure that you're able to transform that into some pressure from the public to lead to lasting change and real reform?
So always being based on research, including when possible original research, and that's why this grant is so important for us. We can generate new data and move the conversation towards those numbers and those catchy headlines that only research can help us do. So we're planning on a new national level survey to update the ones that I showed there. But we also engage with law and policymakers from the beginning. We've had these past few years over 10 briefings on legislations, 2 of them that became enacted or that changed laws in the directions that we pointed out that were risks to free speech, including one that discussed the rights of children online, a very delicate topic that we managed to approach it without minimizing the risks of children engaging in online discussions, but also making sure that those that are able to remove content are qualified actors connected to the children's and the protection of children's rights and so on. So a way of doing this is having a huge network of partners, of qualified, specialized partners. Our staff is very small. We're a very united team, but we work a lot of staff on demand. So we have legal experts, policy experts in Brasilia that are currently working with us, as well as people in communication side of things. With those over 50 opinion articles in the major newspapers in Brazil, we've managed to move the debate across. And just one important case study is reforms to our Supreme Court are a taboo, or have been a taboo for years now, since they purportedly, for some people, managed to save democracy in Brazil. However, they did it by trampling our constitution and implementing an informal state of exception in practice. An article we published last year managed to move this discussion around with a lot of discomfort, to the point that people that used to oppose this topic of reforming the Supreme Court published studies on it, are defending multi-partisan platforms to reform our Supreme Court. So shifting the Overton window around around opinion articles, around data that we publish that is original. So,
That brings us right to 5 minutes. So well done, Jamil.